Congressman King, you wrote an op-ed for The Hill about the increase in violence in New York, and to what do you attribute the drastic increase in crime?
Actually, when I wrote that op-ed, I thought things couldn't get worse, and that was actually 2 days before the 2 cops were shot. So it's New York City, it's almost inevitable this was going to happen based on what's happened over the last several years. You had the bail reform law, which is literally putting criminals back on the street. You had the George Floyd riots, George Floyd death, and the riots that followed that. And that death was used as an excuse. For instance, in New York, no one has done more to save Black lives than the police. And during the Giuliani and Bloomberg terms, the police commissioners had high ratings among the Black community, and crime was reduced by 80 to 90%. And yet when these riots started, you had agitators out in the street, you had the media, you had the politicians defund the police. So because of what happened in Minneapolis and George Floyd, you had Molotov cocktails being thrown at cops in Brooklyn. You had cops being hit with bricks and baseball bats. You had one politician after another attacking the cops, talking about all the racism and how terrible this was, and how basically African Americans were living under a reign of terror. So this was inevitable. This was going to happen, and now there's so much crime we've almost gotten desensitized to it.
Yeah, and the politicians and the left-wing media, the corporate media, they completely explained it all away. Those weren't even considered crimes. You know, if you attacked a police officer at a George Floyd riot, it didn't really matter. So we've got a new mayor now in Eric Adams. He campaigned on reducing crime. In the first few weeks of his tenure, we've seen more deadly violence. Not saying that it's his fault, including an 11-month-old shot. You've been a leader in New York for decades. If you were talking to the mayor, what does he need to do first?
I would tell him there's no room here to go middle ground. There's no room for compromise. He's got to take a tough anti-crime stand. He's got to bring back more of the policies that flourished under Giuliani and Bloomberg. When he talks about too many guns on the street, there's always been too many guns in New York. But the reality is, under Giuliani and Bloomberg, the cops are able to go out in the street and stop and frisk and take those guns away. And that's why murders went from 2,000 down to 300. And there were virtually no innocent people being killed during that time. So he's got to make it clear that the cops can be proactive, that the cops are not going to be scared off by political correctness. And when something does occur, and you have the AOCs of the world and the Andrew Cuomo types of the world talking about how terrible the cops are, that commissioner, the commissioner and the mayor have to stand with the cops. The commissioner, Keyshawn Sewell, I know her well. She was in Essex County. She'll do a great job. But Eric Adams doesn't have the luxury of trying to compromise this. It's not like a tax bill or a highway bill where you give a little of this and a little of that. It's got to be a firm stand against the criminals, a firm stand against these really career criminals, and also a firm stand against the media. Can't let the progressive media dominate what happens on the streets of New York.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, you can't do it halfway, right? I mean, it's
you can't do it.
And
so if I can say one thing, you're talking about the corporate media and the woke corporations.
Yeah.
I wish maybe the NFL would allow players to put on their helmet, "We back the blue, we stand with the cops."
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Instead, the cops are almost evil. You have all these, taking a knee against the cops. No, stand with the cops.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the mayor's going to do. He's talking tough, and of course, getting illegal guns off the street is a good thing. And but we don't have a gun problem; we have a crime problem all across this country.
He is uniquely positioned. A former cop, as an African American, he can get this done. It's up to him. I hope he does. I know Eric Adams. I want him to do it, but he's got to be firm. He's got to be tough.